My name was Farid. I was an Imam, a teacher of the Quran in the bustling heart of Karachi. I wore my discipline like armor, commanding respect while hiding an emptiness that clawed at my soul. In that rigid world of Sharia law, questions were silent screams, and obedience was my creed. I lived in a fortress built by tradition, surrounded by fervent devotion laced with unspoken fear. But deep within me, a storm was brewing, a hunger for truth that would shatter my chains. One fateful night, amidst the turmoil of my spirit, a question arose. It echoed in my mind and danced through my prayers. Why does my heart feel so heavy? As I wrestled with this doubt, darkness enveloped me. An accident, a fleeting moment, and suddenly I was no longer part of this world. I found myself in a desolate landscape, lost in the shadows. Yet, it was there, in that void, that a divine light pierced the darkness. Jesus stood before me, calling my name with a warmth that transcended my understanding. In that sacred encounter, I was shown more than just spiritual truths. I was confronted with a reality that threatened everything I had ever believed. I realized that behind the curtains of my faith lay a manipulation, a system that sought to suppress the freedom of my soul. I understood then that true liberation isn't found in rituals or rules, but in embracing the light of Christ shining through the chaos. But awakening comes at a price. Returning to my life, I found myself ostracized, dubbed a heretic for daring to voice my revelation. My once familiar world turned hostile, shrouded in anger and fear. Yet each moment of rejection only fueled my drive to uncover and understand the truth. I sought solace in the written word and testimonies of others who too had faced the abyss and discovered the light. A relentless search for answers ignited a passion within me, a calling that urged me to share my journey. Today I invite you to listen to my testimony, to understand the battle that rages not just within me, but around us all. As you hear my story, know that it is a reflection of many souls wrestling with their own truths. Together, we can uncover what lies beyond the veil and embrace the transformative power of faith. Before we continue, leave a comment below. Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? I want to hear your voices. Feel the resonance of our shared journey. And if you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond, so you don't miss the revelations that are yet to come. What I share today could be the key to unlocking your freedom. I remember the confines of that strict Islamic school in Karachi, Pakistan, where tradition and authority reigned supreme. We were molded and shaped through the rigid teachings of Sharia law. Obedience was more than a virtue. It was an unyielding demand. The atmosphere was thick with devotion, but shadowed by an omnipresent fear that lingered just beneath the surface. Questioning our beliefs was like challenging the very existence of the sun. It was unthinkable, almost a sacrilege. Yet, in the midst of this shocking rigidity, a part of me felt the faintest flicker of doubt, yearning for truth beyond the confines of text. That doubt grew slowly, like an ember seeking air to ignite. It was during a day like any other, when the routines of lessons and prayers were suddenly disrupted by an event that left the world I knew turned upside down. A tragic accident. A car crash that seemed to take everything from me, pulling me into an abyss of darkness. I remember fading into unconsciousness, and then a sudden stillness. It was then that I experienced what many call a near-death experience. I found myself in a realm beyond comprehension, surrounded by an enlightening glow that felt both warm and threatening. In that expanse of brilliance, I saw him, Jesus. He appeared with a presence so profound that my fears faded away. I was struck not only by his compassion, but by the intensity of his message. Here, in this sacred space, he began to reveal truths that transcended my understanding. He spoke of a spiritual war that rages silently on earth, a conflict fueled by deception that ensnares humanity in the clutches of the elite. Look closer, he urged, and I felt a surge of awakening as revelations cascaded around me. The world was not merely a stage for our daily lives. It was ensnared in a grand illusion, one where the pulse of society was manipulated by unseen forces with hidden agendas. He took me on a journey through time, showing me the strings pulled by leaders who placed power above compassion, instigating wars to fragment souls rather than unite them. My heart ached as I witnessed the pain inflicted by those who traded humanity for greed. From the shadows, the silent manipulations of technology emerged, suffocating truth under layers of distraction. It became clear that the deception was deep-rooted, a multifaceted betrayal of the very essence of our spiritual truths. Each revelation echoed the urgency of awakening from this slumber, demanding an introspection that had been systematically denied to us. I could see, vividly, how the struggle for souls had intensified, with many still trapped in cycles of obedience without real understanding. If I am honest, I felt shame for my former adherence to teachings that dulled the spirit instead of liberating it. "You must rise above," Jesus insisted, his tone gentle yet fierce, igniting a fire within me to share this awakening. He painted a picture of a future marred by division, where understanding was a privilege reserved for the few. "Truth will emerge," he declared, "but only for those willing to seek it fiercely." As I stood in that divine light, I realized my purpose was not merely self-discovery, but becoming a messenger for the hidden truths I had been shown. Before I could grasp more of his profound words, the light around me began to fade, and I felt an urgent pull back to my earthly existence. I awoke in a hospital bed, the beeping of machines a stark contrast to the silence I had experienced. I was alive, but I was changed, no longer a slave to the doctrines that once defined me. The urgency that pulsed through my veins was palpable. It whispered of a mission that lay ahead, one that would demand courage in a world so full of deception. I felt the weight of the truths I had witnessed pressing upon my heart, igniting a fervor to share what I had learned, to awaken others from their sleep. But I also sensed the struggles that waited for those who dared to speak against the tide. As I lay there, the echoes of Jesus, revelations resonated within me, a guide through a shadowed path, preparing me for the spiritual war ahead. I've always been the disciplined one, a respected Quran teacher in my community, teaching young minds the intricate laws of Sharia. At 35, I wore that mantle with seriousness etched into my very being. But beneath the surface, there lay an emotional void, a gnawing contradiction that haunted me daily. I adhered faithfully to the tenets of my faith, yet there was a yearning deep inside for something more, a deeper spiritual fulfillment that the rigidity of my teachings failed to provide. This was a conflict that quietly ruled my life, tethering me to a path that seemed narrow and unyielding. It was late one evening, after a long day of lecturing and correcting my students' verses, that the world as I knew it shattered. On my way home, a sudden and tragic car accident thrust me into an unimaginable darkness. I felt my consciousness slipping away, as if the very essence of my being was being drawn into an abyss. Instead of fear, I found an eerie calmness washing over me. I entered a realm completely unfamiliar, where time ceased to exist and my senses were heightened beyond comprehension. In that profound stillness, I encountered him, Jesus. His presence illuminated the space around us, not with blinding light, but with a warmth that penetrated my very soul. As I stood before him, a myriad of emotions surged within me. This was no mere figure of religious doctrine. This was a living embodiment of truth. He spoke with a clarity that shattered every illusion I had ever known. "There's a spiritual war," he declared, "a battle for the hearts and minds of humanity, waged by the elite through layers of deception." My heart raced as I began to grasp the weight of his message. He revealed to me the hidden agendas of those in power, how they manipulated truths to keep the masses obedient and blind. As he spoke, I saw flashes of the world beyond my own, a tapestry woven with pain, division, and strife. I witnessed the machinations of leaders taking advantage of their followers, instigating conflict to maintain control. I understood then that the inherent peace I longed for was systematically suppressed, designed to keep us trapped in a cycle of misunderstanding and fear. "You must awaken," Jesus urged, "for the truth is there for those willing to see it." His words pierced through the veil of ignorance I had wrapped myself in, igniting a frantic desire to learn, to question everything I'd ever accepted without doubt. In that sacred encounter, he showed me the ways technology has become a tool of manipulation, often distracting us from the very essence of our spiritual existence. The allure of a connected world masked a deeper void. As I witnessed people glued to their screens, I felt an urgent responsibility stir within me. "This is not just about your own awakening," he insisted, "but about guiding others through their own illusions." The revelation was clear. I was being called to share these truths, to challenge the narratives that had ensnared too many. But as I began to understand the depth of my newfound knowledge, a chilling realization hit me. Those who dare to speak out face fierce opposition from the very systems that benefit from our ignorance. As the warmth surrounding Jesus started to fade, I felt an overwhelming urge to grasp onto that moment, the truth still echoing in my mind. "You will go back," he said softly, "but your mission will begin anew." Suddenly, I was hurtling back toward consciousness, the world around me rushing in like a wave. I awoke in a hospital bed, memories of that divine encounter still vivid, but surrounded by the cold clatter of machines. The truths I had witnessed were now my burden and my gift, compelling me toward a mission that felt both daunting and exhilarating. The awakening had begun, but the journey was only just starting, and I sensed a formidable spiritual battle lay ahead of me. How could I share what I had learned with a world so bound by deception? With each passing day, the weight of my prayers felt heavier, and the connection I once cherished began to fray. As a Quran teacher, my life revolved around the teachings of my faith, yet inside, I grappled with a gnawing emptiness that I couldn't shake. Each time I knelt to pray, the words felt like echoes, trapped in a void that longed for meaning. God felt distant, like a far-off star in a night sky, beautiful yet unreachable. The internal questioning started slowly, like a whisper that grew louder, leaving me wrestling with doubts I had dared not express aloud. Was it possible that what I believed in could actually be a mechanism of control? These unexpressed doubts manifested themselves in confounding dreams. Dreams where I wandered through endless corridors of shadow, searched for a light that eluded me. In those dreams, figures cloaked in darkness whispered words tinged with fear. "Awaken. Seek the truth." They were disquieting yet compelling, urging me to peel back the layers of conformity that shrouded my existence. I began to wonder whether my faith, a pillar of my identity, might have concealed something sinister beneath its surface. This sense of disconnect haunted me, fueling an ache that seemed to grow as I delved deeper into my spiritual practices. Then, one fateful night, everything changed. Torn between prophetic dreams and my waning belief, I experienced a collapse, a sudden, heartbreaking moment when my heart faltered under the weight of despair. I felt myself slipping away, surrendering to an overwhelming darkness. But as I drifted into the abyss, a river of light surged toward me, engulfing my senses in an ethereal embrace. It was then that I found myself in the presence of Jesus, not as a distant figure from stories, but as the embodiment of truth and unconditional love. His eyes held an intensity that both calmed and terrified me, drawing me into a new realm of understanding. "Your journey has brought you here for a reason," he spoke, and each word wrapped around me like a warm embrace. You felt the deception woven into the fabric of your understanding. There exists a spiritual war playing out in every corner of this world, a struggle for souls and consciousness. Those in power, the elite, they manipulate faith, turning it into a tool of control rather than liberation. As he spoke, I began to see visions of a world fraught with division, a chaotic tapestry ruled by apathetic leaders who thrived on our ignorance. He laid bare the truth, revealing not only the hidden agenda behind religious manipulation, but also the urgency for our awakening. In that sacred space, the revelation unfurled like a chaotic storm, with visions of current strife flooding my mind, wars ignited by deceit and societal divisions nurtured by fear. I witnessed the destructive power of technology, designed to distract us from our spiritual essence, while simultaneously shackling us to false realities. You feel this emptiness because you've been conditioned to believe that obedience is the path to salvation. Seek your truth, Farid, Jesus urged, for your mission is to guide others through this deception. My heart raced at the weight of his charge, a seismic shift in purpose, beckoning me to reclaim my own understanding and share it with others still caught in the dark. But as his presence began to ebb, the swirl of revelations continued to sweep through me like a torrent of rushing water. There will be resistance, he warned, but your voice must rise in defiance of the tide of ignorance. Suddenly, I felt the pull of the earthly realm dragging me back, the warmth of his light fading into the cold veil of consciousness. I woke abruptly in a stark hospital room, confusion and clarity colliding within me. The encounter with Jesus lingered like a haunting melody, a reminder of the truths now inscribed in my heart. I sat up, feeling an urgency coursing through my veins, knowing that my awakening had just begun. But the battle ahead would demand everything I had. How would I ignite the spark in others? What would become of me in the face of such overwhelming deception? The chaos of the day had come to a close, and I was driving home, my mind whirling with thoughts about my lessons, my students, and the burden of unanswered questions that seemed to loom larger with every passing moment. It was a typical Karachi evening, but the air felt charged with something, a tension that mirrored my internal struggle. Far too often, I found myself questioning the very essence of my faith. In that moment of distraction, an unexpected jolt tore through my reality. A car swerved in front of mine, and everything went black. I felt weightless, as if I were being pulled from my body, and in that disorienting stillness, I thought I was gone. When consciousness returned, I found myself in a desolate desert, the landscape dark and vast. There was no sun, just shadows stretching toward an endless horizon. Fear clawed at my insides, but then, from the darkness, I heard a voice call my name, Farid. It was a voice that wrapped around me like a warm cloak, dispelling the chill of isolation. Suddenly, a figure emerged, illuminated by a soft, radiant light that punctured the bleakness. It was Jesus. In that moment, I knew this was no ordinary meeting. It was a rendezvous that would forever alter my path. Look around you, he instructed, gesturing to the stark emptiness surrounding us. As his words echoed in my mind, I began to see glimpses of truth beneath the desert sands, the forgotten stories of humanity, the battles fought in silence, the spiritual war raging in every corner of the globe. The struggles you witness every day are but reflections of this deeper conflict, he explained. A war not just for land, but for the hearts and souls of mankind. The elite orchestrate a hidden agenda, weaving deception through the very fabric of spirituality. I was both awestruck and terrified, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the revelations flooding my consciousness. As my mind wrestled with the enormity of his words, I felt a surge of clarity. Jesus revealed how religious systems often served more as mechanisms of control rather than avenues for genuine liberation. You've felt it, haven't you? he asked, piercing through the facade I had worn for so long. That emptiness in your prayers, the disconnection. It is designed to keep you submissive, to prevent awakening. The truth struck deep, igniting a flame of urgency within me. I realized the bondage I had been trapped in, clinging to traditions that barred me from embracing the fullness of spiritual reality. Vision after vision unfolded before me. Specters of chaos driven by fear and ignorance, leaders who thrived on division, nations torn apart by war and strife, all while the masses remained hypnotized by the allure of false promises. I witnessed the manipulation of technology, a tool aimed at distraction rather than enlightenment. Jesus stood firm, illuminating the beyond, urging me to see the interconnectedness of everything as he shared insights about the fragility of humanity's unity and the desperate need for awakening. The age of awakening is upon you, but it requires courage to step into the light of truth, he warned. The stakes have never been higher. In those moments, I felt the weight of 1,000 souls pressing on my heart, each one a testament to the collective struggle against manipulation and deceit. You must be a voice for those still lost in the shadows, Jesus urged, his gaze piercing through me, for they are bound by the same hidden agenda that sought to drown your spirit. As the light around him began to wane, my heart raced, recognizing the sheer responsibility placed upon my shoulders. The urgency for change throbbed fiercely within me. Just when I thought I grasped the depth of his message, everything began to fade. I could feel the pull of my earthly existence returning, but I couldn't shake the sensation that this was merely the beginning of my true journey. What awaited me on the other side as I stepped into the light? When I awoke in that hospital room, the memories of my encounter with Jesus were still vivid, yet what followed was a storm of anguish that quickly enveloped me. I tried to share the revelations with my family, my friends, believing they'd understand the profound truths I had been shown. All I hoped for was an open heart, a moment of shared enlightenment. Instead, I was met with disbelief, anger, and rejection. "You've strayed from the path," they declared, eyes blazing with fury. "You are nothing but a heretic." Their words cut deeper than any physical wound ever could, echoing in my mind like haunting echoes through an empty chamber. As they hurled accusations at me, I felt the walls closing in. My own kin, those I had shared my life with, now regarded me as an outsider, a threat to the very fabric of our beliefs. I grappled with overwhelming guilt for having disturbed the status quo, fear for my safety, and profound isolation that pressed down upon me like a weight too heavy to bear. The community's response mirrored what I had seen in Jesus' revelations, the resistance to awaken from the slumber of deception. I wished to scream, to shake them from their lethargy, to reveal the spiritual war that raged silently around us, yet I was rendered voiceless by my own despair. It wasn't just my family's anger that chained me. It was the deep-seated fear that I had exposed myself to forces I couldn't comprehend. I sensed their growing hostility, like a shadow looming over me, ready to strike at any moment. The very people I thought would support me in my awakening now turned their backs, pushing me further into a desolate landscape of emotional turmoil. Each day I wandered through my routines at the school, teaching verses I no longer felt connected to, wearing a mask of normality while inside, my spirit screamed out for truth. It felt like a betrayal, not only of my faith, but of my very essence. As whispers spread through the community, I couldn't help but feel the hand of that hidden agenda at work, the elite manipulating minds through fear and tradition. Those who clung to outdated doctrines were unwilling to confront the truths I had encountered. It was safer to remain blind. I understood their fear, having felt it myself, but it enraged me as well. Why wouldn't they question? Why wouldn't they seek the deeper meanings hidden behind their beliefs? The vision of Jesus, radiating truth about the deception woven through our spiritual lives, felt like a mission unfulfilled, a purpose to awaken others still entrapped in darkness. The emotional toll took its toll in ways I never anticipated. Nights were sleepless, filled with dreams that echoed back to the desert, back to Jesus, piercing gaze and the urgency in his message. Fear and guilt mingled with the resolve that had begun to take root within me. I knew the truth had to be told, that the spiritual war could not continue unchallenged. Yet, with each passing moment, I felt more alone as the weight of isolation closed in. The conflict raged inside of me, a desire to escape the pain versus the duty to share what had ignited my soul. As I stood before my window, staring into the night, I realized the fight was far from over. My awakening was merely the beginning of a greater battle. How could I turn back now? How could I silence the calling that urged me to rise against the tide of deception? In my search for truth, I found myself wandering down roads I had never anticipated, navigating the murky waters of my own faith while wrestling with profound questions. Despite the risk of losing everything familiar, I knew I had to explore the Bible, a text I had always viewed from a distance. Deep into the night, I would read in secret, feeling the weight of each word resonate within me. The more I uncovered, the clearer the revelations became. I felt drawn into a world where Jesus wasn't just a figure confined to the pages of Scripture, but a living truth that awakened my spirit from its slumber. The stories I read ignited a flame that thawed the icy grip of doubt, providing a haven of peace amid the chaos surrounding me. As I delved deeper, I sought out others who shared in this awakening. It was through whispered connections and hidden forums that I discovered a community of believers who had also encountered grief and transformation. Together we shared our journeys, stories of pain, loss, and ultimately hope. My heart expanded with every conversation, and I felt an unshakable bond with those who understood the gravity of living in a spiritual war, besieged on all sides by deception. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of belonging, a sense that I was not alone in this struggle against the hidden agendas that sought to cloud our minds and hearts. But in the shadow of that newfound peace lay an ever-looming threat. The fear of being discovered haunted me, the threat that my family and community could turn their backs on me completely if they learned of my exploration. As a Quran teacher in this traditional society, I understood the stakes were high. I wanted to scream the truths I had come to embrace, to awaken those I loved, yet I faced the reality that doing so could cost me everything. The concept of baptism danced in my mind, an act of profound commitment that felt like both liberation and a heavy burden. Each time I considered it, I felt a rush of love and fear intertwined, propelling me forward yet holding me back. So I prayed. I prayed with a fervor I had never known, my heart pouring out to Jesus in those quiet moments when I was alone. "Help me find a way," I whispered in the stillness of the night. "Lead me through this darkness." My prayers were met with a sense of assurance, an echo of the comfort I had felt during my near-death experience. This wasn't just about faith anymore. It was about awakening an entire existence from the grip of deception. I felt the urgency surge within me, a calling to take a stand, to give a voice to those still silenced by fear. Each passing day deepened my resolve as I planned my baptism in secret. I envisioned stepping into that water, symbolically shedding all of the confusion, guilt, and fear that had once suffocated me. Yet the tension mounted. In this journey to uncover the truth and embrace my awakening, there lingered the shadow of potential isolation. I was constantly reminded of what I stood to lose, but in the depths of my spirit, I felt a compelling urge to take a leap of faith, to jump into the abyss of the unknown, trusting that Jesus would guide me through whatever darkness lay ahead. With each heartbeat, I grew more aware, revelations swirling around me like stars in a night sky, waiting for the moment I would finally step forward. As I navigated through the darkness of my doubts and fears, I began to realize that my experience was not merely a coincidence. It felt like a divine calling, a relentless beckoning from a higher power. I could no longer ignore the urgency pulsing through my soul, compelling me to warn others about the truths I had uncovered. In the shadow of this awakening, the weight of responsibility settled upon my shoulders like a mantle. I understood that there was a spiritual war taking place not just within me, but throughout the world. This was a battle for hearts, minds, and souls, a conflict fueled by deception and orchestrated by an elite few who thrived on ignorance and division. Each revelation that came to me felt like a jolt of electricity sparking through my veins. I could see clearly now how easily people were manipulated by fear, how governments and industries peddled narratives designed to keep us compliant. The tangled web of lies, woven intricately into our religious and social structures, became painfully evident. I thought of families torn apart by differing beliefs and leaders who exploited these divisions for power, each one a player in a hidden agenda that sought to maintain the status quo at all costs. How could I stand idly by while the truth lay dormant, choking under the weight of deception? I couldn't just sit in silence anymore. With each passing day, the urge to share my story grew stronger, pushing me toward the precipice of action. I envisioned myself standing before others, speaking the messages Jesus had imparted to me during that transformative moment in the desert. The thought exhilarated and terrified me in equal measure. I understood the risks involved: rejection, threats, and the very real possibility of losing everything I held dear. Yet, the need to awaken those who were still shackled to their misconceptions, wrestling in the deception that permeated our lives, felt like a calling more profound than my fear. As I prepared to step into this spiritual warfare, every fiber of my being resonated with the conviction that I had to act. I made the decision to use my voice, an act of defiance against the overwhelming tide of conformity that sought to silence me. I gathered what little courage I had and sought informal gatherings with others who were questioning their faith, those who had felt the tug of awakening like I had. I spoke about my experience, the truths I had discovered, and the imminent danger posed by the hidden agendas of those who claimed to lead us. Each conversation felt like lighting a spark in the darkness, but it was also a reminder of how easily the light could be extinguished. Despite my growing resolve, doubt still crept in during moments of solitude. Was I stepping into a dangerous territory, or was I truly fulfilling a higher purpose? The threats to my safety loomed larger than ever, but that did not deter me. Instead, they fueled my determination. I recalled the face of Jesus and the love that radiated from him during our encounter. It gave me a sense of peace, a conviction that I was not alone in this battle. Each day brought new challenges. The response from my community ranged from cautious curiosity to outright hostility. I had begun a journey that would irrevocably alter my life, one where I would have to confront the realities of spiritual warfare head-on. In the silence of my prayers, I implored for guidance, asking for strength to continue sharing the truth. I felt a sense of urgency growing within me, knowing that the awakening needed to spread far beyond my own experiences. We were standing at a crossroads, and I was compelled to sound the alarm. The spiritual war was raging, with souls caught in the crossfire, and it was my mission to break through the fog of deception that had clouded so many lives. As my conviction deepened, I felt the momentum building, knowing that with every voice unified in the pursuit of truth, an awakening of profound magnitude could begin. But how to navigate this treacherous path ahead? How could I make the truth resonate in hearts and minds that had been conditioned to resist? In a dramatic turn of events, I found myself faced with an impossible choice: to remain in the shadows of my previous life, or to step boldly into a new identity, a new purpose. Leaving my home was a defining moment, an act of courage driven by the revelations Jesus had shared with me. The whispers of my truth couldn't be silenced. I had to proclaim what I had discovered, the awakening that had redefined my very being. Under the cloak of night, I packed the few belongings I could carry and left behind not just my home but the life I had known, a life that was now riddled with chains of fear and deception. As I ventured into the unknown, my heart wrestled with fear and hope simultaneously. I had adopted a new identity, one that would protect me from the anger of those I once held dear, yet it offered me a sense of liberation. The sense of freedom I felt was intoxicating, but it came laced with an undeniable ache, an ache for the family and community I had left behind. With every step I took, I could feel the weight of suffering within me morph into a powerful resolve. I knew in my heart that my journey was not just about self-preservation. It was about uncovering and sharing the truth, about helping others who had suffered similar fates, who had felt the suffocating grip of deception in their own lives. In the months that followed, I threw myself into connecting with others who yearned for truth. My new life allowed me to evangelize, to share the revelation I had received in the desert. I met countless souls who had also dared to question, who had felt the stirrings of awakening amidst their own adversities. We formed a community bound by a shared quest for authenticity, a desire to navigate the spiritual war that raged both within and outside our hearts. In our connection, I found joy and purpose, pouring my energy into helping others break free from the hidden agendas that continued to ensnare too many lives. Living in a foreign land, I adapted to new customs and cultures, but the essence of my mission remained unchanged. I dedicated myself to spreading the truth that had been revealed to me, a truth that transcended boundaries and united the weary souls seeking light. Each story I shared sparked something profound in those who listened, an awakening, a flicker of hope igniting in their eyes. I became an ambassador for truth, tirelessly working to unveil the deception that the elite perpetuated to manipulate and divide. In every encounter, I witnessed lives transformed, souls reconnected with their true purpose. Years passed, and though my journey led me far from my family, the hope for reconciliation simmered within me. I often envisioned a day when the veil of misunderstanding could be lifted, when I might share the depths of my experiences with those I had loved so dearly. I dreamt of them hearing the very truths that had once shaken my own foundations, that had catapulted me into this new life. But even as my heart swelled with hope, I understood the fear still held them captive. Navigating this tension between my new mission and the memories of my past became part of the struggle I embraced. I could only pray that one day they would awaken as I had, discovering the profound truth hidden beneath the surface of their beliefs. That was the essence of my journey, a relentless pursuit of truth, dripping with urgency and filled with the promise of awakening. As I stand here today, sharing this reflection of my journey, one that has taken me from the deep confines of tradition to the radiant light of truth, I must ask you, have you ever felt a whisper in your spirit urging you to awaken? To question the very fabric of what you've been taught, and recognize that there exists a vast tapestry woven with hidden truths, spiritual conflicts, and the unmistakable call of something greater than ourselves. Because indeed, my friend, there is a war raging not just within us, but around us, one that seeks to blind us to our true purpose. Through my encounter with Jesus, I discovered that we are all threads in this intricate design, resisting manipulation and deception. Yet so many remain ensnared in the darkness of unchallenged beliefs. As I share my testimony, I invite you to consider, in what ways have you felt the stirrings of doubt or the urgency to seek? Your path may very well intersect with the awakening of countless others. I encourage you to reflect on your own journey and share your experiences in the comments below. Together, we can foster deeper conversations about the unseen battles we face. If you felt a flicker of inspiration from my story, if it touched a chord in your heart, then I urge you not to leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond and hitting that notification bell. This channel holds the promise of transformative revelations yet to come, messages crafted to empower you and awaken the truth within. You are not alone in this quest. We are all part of a greater awakening, and your voice matters in this journey. In our next video, I will delve into another miraculous testimony, one that highlights the profound impact of faith amidst adversity, shedding light on the hidden power of hope in the darkest of times. Don't miss it, as it may resonate with your own path and spark a deeper connection to the divine. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Farid, and I leave you with this thought. The journey toward truth is ongoing, filled with discoveries that may not always be easy, but they are essential for our liberation. Keep seeking, keep questioning. Your awakening is just the beginning.